Captain Danica Hayes had served her country for 12 years, believing the military always protected its own. Tonight, staring at financial records spread across her desk at Fort Harrison, that faith crumbled. The numbers didn't lie. Millions meant for veteran healthcare had vanished into ghost projects and inflated contracts. Her hands trembled as she traced the paper trail leading to one name, Colonel Richard Thornton. Some discoveries, Danica realized, changed everything. This one would nearly cost her life. Before we dive into Danica's story of courage against corruption, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from today. Now, let's go back to where it all began. Captain Danica Hayes pushed back from her desk and rubbed her eyes. The clock on her computer screen read 10:47 p.m. Most of the administrative building at Fort Harrison had emptied hours ago, but the monthly supply reports weren't going to review themselves. She reached for her coffee mug and found it empty. Again. The bitter aftertaste lingered as she turned back to the stack of papers. Numbers had always made sense to Danica, cleaner than people, more honest than politics. In 12 years of service, she'd built her reputation on getting the details right. Just finish the healthcare allocations, she muttered, flipping to the next page. Then go home. The veteran medical supply budget stared back at her. Something felt wrong. She pulled out her calculator and ran the numbers again. The total should have been $2.3 million for the quarter. Her screen showed $1.8 million. $500,000. Missing. Danica frowned and opened the digital files on her computer. Maybe she'd grabbed the wrong printout. Her fingers clicked through folders, cross-referencing purchase orders with delivery receipts. The more she dug, the bigger the hole became. Her phone buzzed. A text from her brother Marcus. Hey sis, still waiting on that wheelchair ramp approval. VA says it's a funding issue. Any ideas? She stared at the message. Marcus had lost his leg in Afghanistan 3 years ago. The VA had been promising that ramp for 8 months. Funding issue. Danica's jaw tightened. She pulled up the construction budget files. There it was, a $50,000 allocation for Base Beautification Project 7 Alpha. She'd never heard of Project 7 Alpha. According to the records, it was a landscaping upgrade for the officers' club parking lot. $50,000 for flowers, she said to her empty office. While veterans wait for wheelchairs. She kept digging. Project 12 Bravo, $200,000 for administrative facility enhancement. The photos showed new marble flooring in the colonel's conference room. Project 15 Charlie, $150,000 for morale improvement infrastructure. A hot tub installation behind the senior officers' quarters. Each project had the same approval signature, Colonel Richard Thornton. Danica leaned back in her chair. Thornton ran the base logistics division. Charming guy, always had a smile and a joke for everyone. He'd given the Memorial Day speech about honoring those who served. Standing ovation from the entire base. She pulled up more files. The pattern was everywhere. Medical equipment orders cut in half, with the savings redirected to construction projects. Physical therapy funding slashed to pay for officers' club renovations. Veteran housing maintenance deferred while new admin buildings went up. Her phone rang, making her jump. Hayes. Danica? It's Sarah. Her friend's voice sounded tired. Sarah worked at the base clinic. You still at the office? Yeah, just finishing some reports. What's up? We're out of insulin again. 3rd time this month. Doc says we might have to send diabetic vets to the civilian hospital in town. Their insurance doesn't always cover it. Danica looked at her screen. The medical supply budget showed a $75,000 reduction from last quarter. Sarah, how much would a full insulin stock cost? Maybe 15 grand? Why? 15,000. Less than the cost of the new sound system in Thornton's office. Just curious. Get some sleep, okay? You too. Don't work too late. Danica hung up and stared at the evidence spread across her desk. This wasn't just accounting errors or bureaucratic inefficiency. This was deliberate. Systematic. Every dollar stolen from veteran care had lined up to benefit the same group of senior officers. She opened a new folder on her computer and began copying files. Screenshots of budget allocations. Photos of the construction projects. Email chains discussing the adjustments to medical funding. The digital trail painted a clear picture of betrayal. Her hands shook as she saved the last document. Tomorrow she would have to decide what to do with this information. Report it through proper channels and hope someone listened. Or keep quiet and pretend she'd never seen the numbers that didn't add up. But as she looked at the text from her brother still glowing on her phone screen, she knew the choice was already made. Some discoveries demanded action, no matter the cost. Danica gathered the papers and locked them in her desk drawer. She had work to do. The next morning would bring new challenges she couldn't yet imagine. Danica stepped into the office of her immediate supervisor, Lieutenant Colonel Simmons, at 0800 sharp. The morning sun filtered through Venetian blinds, casting harsh lines across his cluttered desk. Coffee stains marked the edge of his blotter, and a half-eaten donut sat forgotten beside a stack of unread reports. "Lieutenant Colonel," she began, placing a thick folder on his desk. "I found serious discrepancies in the veteran healthcare budget. $500,000 missing from this quarter alone." Simmons barely glanced up from his computer screen. His fingers kept typing. "These accounting things happen, Hayes. Probably just a database error. Give it a few weeks." "Sir, I've triple-checked the numbers. This isn't an error." Danica opened the folder and spread out the evidence. Purchase orders that don't match delivery receipts. Funds transferred to construction projects while medical supplies run short. Simmons finally looked at the papers, his eyes scanning quickly without really reading. He leaned back in his chair and rubbed his temples. "Look, I appreciate your thoroughness, but you're stirring up a hornet's nest. You don't want to get labeled as a troublemaker. Trust the system. The system is failing our veterans, sir." "The system," Simmons said firmly, "takes time. Be patient." 2 hours later, Danica sat in the Inspector General's waiting room. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and the air smelled like disinfectant and stale coffee. Behind bulletproof glass, a young clerk processed paperwork with mechanical efficiency. "I need to file a formal complaint regarding misuse of funds," Danica said, sliding her folder through the narrow slot. The clerk didn't look up. "We're short-staffed. Could take 6 to 8 weeks for an initial review. Fill out forms 27A through 27D. The paperwork felt endless. Every line demanded specific information, exact dates, witness statements that didn't exist yet. Danica's hand cramped as she wrote, but she pressed on. After a 3-hour wait, an investigator appeared. Major Rodriguez was polite but distant, his smile never reaching his eyes. "Captain Hayes, I understand you have concerns about fund allocations." "More than concerns, sir. I have documented proof of systematic theft from veteran healthcare accounts." Rodriguez nodded slowly, like he'd heard this before. "These financial investigations are quite complex. Many moving parts. We'll certainly look into it. When can I expect an update? Our priority is maintaining confidentiality during the investigative process. You may not hear much until we reach conclusions." Walking back to her office, Danica noticed the whispers starting. Groups of officers stopped talking when she passed. Sergeant Mitchell, who usually waved from across the hallway, suddenly found paperwork urgent enough to study intensely. Her phone buzzed. "Sergeant Lewis from Motor Pool, word's getting around. Colonel Thornton knows you've been asking questions. Watch yourself." That afternoon, while reviewing supply manifests, Danica heard voices from the break room. "She's making waves over nothing," someone said. "Thornton's got connections all the way to the Pentagon. Career suicide." "But what if she's right?" another voice replied. "Doesn't matter. You don't challenge a full colonel and survive." Danica's coffee tasted bitter. She'd always believed the military protected whistleblowers. The reality felt different. At 1,400 hours, her phone rang. "Captain Hayes? This is Colonel Thornton's office. The colonel would like to see you." Now. Thornton's office occupied the corner of the administration building. Rich mahogany furniture, awards covering every wall, and a view overlooking the parade ground. He stood behind his desk, 6 feet tall with silver hair and sharp blue eyes. "Captain Hayes." His voice was smooth, controlled. "I hear you've been very busy lately." "Just doing my job, sir." "Your job?" Thornton walked around his desk, stopping just close enough to invade her personal space. "Your job is supply accountability, not detective work. Accountability includes ensuring funds reach their intended purpose." Thornton's smile never wavered, but something cold flickered in his eyes. "There are consequences to rocking the boat, Captain. Sometimes people fall overboard." "Are you threatening me, sir?" "I'm advising you. As someone with your best interests at heart." The meeting lasted only 5 minutes, but Danica left feeling like she'd stepped into quicksand. The walls were closing in, and powerful people wanted her silenced. That evening, she sat alone in her office, staring at the evidence spread across her desk. Her hands shook slightly as she reached for her phone to call Marcus. "Hey, sis. How's the ramp approval going?" His laugh was bitter. "Still waiting. They say maybe next month." "Maybe." After hanging up, Danica made her decision. She opened her computer and began typing a detailed report to send higher up the chain. No matter what Thornton threatened, she wouldn't stop fighting. The pressure was building, but so was her resolve. Monday morning brought new orders. Danica stared at the assignment sheet on her desk, reading it twice to make sure she understood correctly. Inventory audit of Building C storage units. Complete by Friday. Building C hadn't been used in years. Everyone knew it was empty except for broken furniture and outdated equipment. This wasn't work, it was punishment. She grabbed her clipboard and headed across base. The morning air was crisp, and she could hear drill instructors shouting cadences from the training fields. Normal sounds of a functioning military base, while she walked toward meaningless busy work. Building C smelled like dust and mold. Bare fluorescent bulbs flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows between towering metal shelves. Cobwebs stretched between unused filing cabinets. Mice had made nests in the corners. Danica pulled out her pen and began counting. 12 broken chairs. 7 damaged desks. 43 boxes of obsolete computer parts from the 1990s. Item by item, she documented junk that would never be used again. Her phone buzzed. A text from her friend Captain Rodriguez in personnel. "Your performance review moved up." Thornton requested it personally. Her stomach dropped. Performance reviews weren't scheduled for 3 months. This wasn't routine. That afternoon, she sat across from Lieutenant Colonel Simmons again. This time, he avoided eye contact. Her personnel file lay open between them, and she could see red ink corrections scattered across pages that had always shown exemplary ratings. "Your attention to detail has become concerning," Simmons said, reading from notes he'd clearly written recently. "Colleagues report you've been distracted, asking inappropriate questions." "Inappropriate questions about missing funds?" "Hayes." His voice carried a warning. "Your recent work shows signs of paranoia. Maybe you need some time off." Danica felt the blood drain from her face. Medical leave for mental health concerns would destroy her security clearance. Without clearance, her career was over. "My work has been exemplary for 12 years. People change. Stress affects everyone differently." Simmons closed the file. "Consider it a suggestion for now." Walking back to her office, Danica noticed how conversations stopped when she approached. The base coffee shop, where she'd eaten lunch for 2 years, suddenly had no available tables when she entered. Staff Sergeant Williams, who used to joke about weekend plans, now studied his boots whenever they passed in hallways. Word traveled fast on a military base. She was radioactive. Wednesday brought another useless assignment, reorganizing supply closets in the basement of Building D. The fluorescent lights barely worked, and the air conditioning hadn't functioned since the Clinton administration. Danica sorted through boxes of outdated forms and expired medical supplies, sweating in the dim underground space. Around noon, Sergeant First Class Davis appeared at the top of the stairs. She'd worked with Davis for 3 years, solid soldier, always reliable. "Captain Hayes?" Davis looked uncomfortable. "I wanted to tell you myself. They're reassigning me to logistics at Fort Campbell." "When?" "End of the week." Davis stepped closer and lowered his voice. "The colonel specifically requested I be transferred. Said he needed experienced personnel elsewhere. Another ally gone." Thornton was systematically removing anyone who might support her. That evening, Danica sat in her empty office. The building felt hollow after hours, with only the hum of vending machines and the distant sound of MPs making their rounds. Her computer screen glowed with the evidence she'd gathered: bank transfers, fake project approvals, missing medical supplies. Her desk phone rang, making her jump. "Hayes." "Captain, it's Sergeant Martinez from the clinic." His voice was barely above a whisper. "I shouldn't be calling, but I thought you should know. We're completely out of pain medication for the veterans. 3rd week running. What about the emergency supply fund? Thornton's office says there's no money available. Paperwork got lost somewhere." After hanging up, Danica pulled up Thornton's latest construction project on her computer. The Officers Club was getting a $75,000 renovation. New marble countertops, professional-grade kitchen equipment, wine storage. $75,000. Enough to supply the clinic for 6 months. Her hands clenched into fists. Veterans were suffering while Thornton lived like royalty. The pressure campaign was working exactly as intended: isolate her, discredit her, make her doubt herself. But instead of breaking her resolve, it was hardening into something stronger. Friday afternoon, she finished cataloging the last box of worthless supplies. As she climbed the stairs from Building D's basement, she heard familiar voices echoing from the parking lot. "She'll quit soon enough," someone said. "Nobody fights this long without backup. Thornton's got her boxed in perfectly." Classic play. Danica paused at the door, listening to colleagues discuss her defeat like it was already decided. They'd counted her out too early. She pushed through the door into bright sunlight, her jaw set with determination. The isolation hurt, but it also clarified everything. She was fighting for veterans who couldn't fight for themselves. The pressure would only get worse from here. Danica's alarm buzzed at 0530 Saturday morning. She'd barely slept, her mind cycling through everything she'd discovered over the past 2 weeks. The evidence was overwhelming now: dozens of diverted payments, fake project approvals, veterans denied care while officers enjoyed luxury upgrades. She made coffee and spread the files across her kitchen table. Bank statements, construction invoices, medical supply shortages, all leading back to Thornton. But having proof and getting justice were 2 different things. Her laptop chimed with a new email. The subject line made her stomach drop: Fort Harrison Awards Ceremony, Personnel Assignments. She clicked it open. The annual Base Awards ceremony was scheduled for next Friday. Colonel Thornton would receive the Distinguished Service Medal for exceptional leadership in resource management and veteran advocacy. The irony burned like acid in her throat. Danica scrolled through the details. The ceremony would take place in the main auditorium. 500 personnel attending, including visiting dignitaries from the Pentagon. Full dress uniforms required. Media coverage planned. And according to the budget breakdown attached to the email, the entire event was funded by reallocated veteran healthcare money. The catering alone cost $30,000, enough to supply the clinic with antibiotics for months. Her phone rang. Marcus again. "Hey, sis. Good news and bad news. Give me the good news first. The good news is they finally approved my wheelchair ramp. His voice sounded tired. Bad news is they say it'll be 6 more months before installation. Funding delays. Danica closed her eyes. While Thornton celebrated his phony medal, her brother waited for basic accessibility. Marcus, can you do something for me? Document everything. Every delay, every excuse, every form they make you fill out. Keep records. Why? You working on something? Maybe. Just trust me. After hanging up, Danica made a decision that would change everything. She opened her computer and began typing a detailed report, not for her superiors, who had already ignored her, but for the media contacts she'd researched online. 2 hours later, she had a comprehensive document outlining Thornton's corruption. Bank transfers, construction costs, veteran testimonials about denied care. Everything needed to expose the truth. But she needed more than documentation. She needed witnesses. Monday morning, Danica walked across base with purpose. First stop, the clinic. She found Sergeant Martinez restocking supplies in a storage closet barely bigger than a phone booth. How are the pain medication shortages? She asked quietly. Martinez looked around nervously. Still critical. We're rationing pills meant to last 3 days over an entire week. Veterans are suffering. Would you be willing to document that? Official statement? His face went pale. Captain, I can't afford to lose this job. I've got kids. I understand. Danica handed him her business card. If you change your mind, call me. Next stop, the motor pool. She found Sergeant Lewis working under the hood of a Humvee that should have been replaced years ago. Lewis, how's the equipment budget these days? He wiped greasy hands on his coveralls. Terrible. We're cannibalizing parts from broken vehicles to keep others running. Safety inspections are getting creative. While the officers' club gets new everything. Lewis nodded grimly. I've noticed. Hard not to when you're rationing brake pads while they're installing wine fridges. Would you speak up about it? Officially? Lewis was quiet for a long moment. You're really going after Thornton, aren't you? Yes. Then count me in. This has gone too far. By Wednesday, Danica had quiet support from 8 personnel willing to provide statements. Not enough to guarantee safety, but enough to corroborate her evidence. Thursday evening brought an unexpected visitor. Lieutenant Jennifer Walsh knocked on Danica's office door at 1900 hours. Walsh worked in Thornton's office, his personal aide. Captain Hayes? Walsh looked terrified. I need to talk to you. Come in. Close the door. Walsh sat down and pulled out a flash drive. I've been copying files for months. Budget transfers, email conversations, meeting notes. Everything. Danica's heart pounded. Why? Because I joined the Army to serve, not to watch officers steal from veterans. Walsh's hands shook as she placed the drive on the desk. Thornton thinks I'm just a secretary who doesn't understand the numbers. He's wrong. The flash drive contained everything, detailed financial records, email chains discussing the reallocation strategy, meeting minutes where Thornton joked about veterans being too grateful to complain. Jennifer, this is incredibly dangerous for you. I know. But I can't watch this anymore. Walsh stood up. The awards ceremony is tomorrow. He's going to give a speech about serving veterans while sitting on stolen money. It makes me sick. That night, Danica sat in her apartment, reviewing everything one final time. The evidence was bulletproof now. Financial records, witness statements, insider documentation. Thornton's corruption was undeniable. Her laptop showed the ceremony program. Thornton's speech was scheduled for 1,030 hours, right after the medal presentation. He would stand before 500 military personnel and praise his own dedication to veteran care. The hypocrisy was staggering. Danica pulled out her dress uniform and began preparing it for tomorrow. Each button polished, each ribbon positioned perfectly. If she was going to end her career, she would do it looking like the soldier she'd always been. Her phone buzzed with a text from Lewis. "Whatever happens tomorrow, you've got backup. Some of us still believe in doing what's right." Similar messages came from Martinez, Walsh, and the others who'd agreed to support her. They were scared, but they were ready. Danica looked at herself in the mirror. Tomorrow, she would walk into that auditorium knowing her military career was probably over. But Marcus would get his ramp. Veterans would get their medicine. And Thornton would face justice. She set her alarm for 0500 and tried to sleep. Tomorrow would bring the confrontation she'd been building towards since that first night when the numbers didn't add up. The morning of the ceremony was about to change everything. Danica arrived at the main auditorium at 0800 hours. The ceremony wasn't scheduled to begin until 0930, but she needed time to prepare mentally. Her dress uniform felt heavier than usual, each ribbon and medal carrying the weight of her decision. The auditorium buzzed with activity. Audio technicians tested microphones while event coordinators arranged flowers on the stage. Red, white, and blue bunting draped the walls, and a massive American flag hung as the backdrop. Everything looked perfect for celebrating military excellence. She found her assigned seat in the third row, close enough to see Thornton's face when he gave his speech. Close enough to act when the moment came. Other officers filed in gradually. Danica recognized most faces, though few made eye contact anymore. Her isolation was complete, but she felt strangely calm. The decision was made. Now came execution. At 0915, the auditorium filled rapidly. 500 personnel in dress uniforms created a sea of military precision. Visiting dignitaries occupied the front row, generals from the Pentagon, local politicians, veteran organization leaders. A news crew set up cameras in the back corner. Sergeant Lewis caught her eye from across the aisle and nodded slightly. 3 rows behind, Lieutenant Walsh sat ramrod straight, her face pale but determined. Martinez was stationed near the side exit, close enough to hear everything. Her allies were in position. The base commander took the podium at 0930 sharp. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Fort Harrison's annual awards ceremony. Today we recognize outstanding service members who embody our highest values of honor, courage, and commitment." Polite applause filled the auditorium. Danica's hands remained folded in her lap. The first hour proceeded predictably. Junior enlisted received commendation medals for perfect attendance. NCOs were recognized for training excellence. Each presentation drew warm applause from the audience. Danica's stomach tightened as Thornton's moment approached. He sat on stage with other senior officers, occasionally smiling and waving at the crowd. The perfect image of military leadership. At 1025 hours, the base commander approached the podium again. "Our final award today recognizes exceptional leadership in resource management and veteran advocacy. Colonel Richard Thornton has overseen millions of dollars in base improvements while maintaining our commitment to those who served before us." The audience rose in standing ovation. Danica remained seated, her jaw clenched. Around her, officers and enlisted personnel clapped enthusiastically for a man they believed served veterans with dedication. Thornton walked to the podium with practiced confidence. His smile was warm, his posture perfect. The Distinguished Service Medal gleamed on his chest as he adjusted the microphone. "Thank you for this tremendous honor," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the auditorium's sound system. "When I accepted the position of logistics commander, I made a promise to put our veterans first. Every decision, every budget allocation, every resource deployment has been guided by that principle." Danica's hands balled into fists. The audacity was breathtaking. "We've accomplished incredible things together," Thornton continued. "Modern facilities that enhance readiness. Updated infrastructure that improves quality of life. Strategic investments that benefit everyone who serves at Fort Harrison." She thought about Marcus, still waiting for his wheelchair ramp. About veterans rationing pain medication while Thornton installed wine refrigerators. About medical equipment orders canceled to fund marble countertops. But we must never forget, Thornton's voice grew more passionate, that our greatest responsibility is to those who sacrificed for freedom. The veterans who gave everything for this nation deserve our absolute best effort. They deserve leaders who put their needs above personal comfort or convenience. The hypocrisy hit like a physical blow. Danica felt heat rising in her chest, her breathing becoming shallow. Around her, the audience nodded approvingly at Thornton's inspiring words about veteran care. That's why every program we've funded, every improvement we've made, has been designed with veterans in mind. Their welfare guides every choice we make. Danica stood up. The movement was sudden enough to draw attention from nearby officers. Heads turned in her direction as she stepped into the aisle. The microphone picked up a slight feedback whine as Thornton paused mid-sentence, noticing the disturbance. "Excuse me," Danica said, her voice carrying in the sudden quiet. "I have something to say about veteran welfare." A murmur rippled through the auditorium. The base commander leaned forward, looking confused. Security personnel along the walls shifted position, unsure how to respond to an officer interrupting a formal ceremony. Thornton's face darkened, but he maintained his public smile. "Captain Hayes, this isn't the appropriate venue for questions. Please return to your seat." "This is exactly the appropriate venue," Danica replied, walking closer to the stage. "You're receiving an award for veteran advocacy. The audience deserves to know what that really means." The murmur grew louder. News cameras swiveled toward the confrontation. Visiting dignitaries exchanged concerned glances as the ceremony devolved into something unexpected. "Captain Hayes," Thornton's voice carried a warning edge. "You're disrupting an official function. Sit down immediately. While you stand there talking about putting veterans first, my brother waits 8 months for a wheelchair ramp because of funding delays. While you praise strategic investments, veterans can't get pain medication because the budget was cut." The auditorium fell silent. 500 people watched as Thornton's composure began to crack. His smile faded, replaced by cold anger. "That's enough." He stepped down from the podium, moving toward her with long, determined strides. "You will not disrupt this ceremony with baseless accusations." Danica stood her ground as he approached. "Baseless? I have documentation of every dollar you've stolen from veteran healthcare. Every fake construction project. Every." Thornton reached her position and grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her uniform sleeve. "You're done, Captain." Security. The physical contact crossed the line. Danica felt the eyes of 500 personnel watching as their respected colonel put his hands on a subordinate officer. This was the moment everything changed. In the stunned silence that followed, she could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. The auditorium held its breath. Thornton's grip on Danica's arm tightened as he tried to pull her toward the exit. His public mask had completely slipped, revealing the calculating man beneath. "Let go of me, sir," Danica said clearly, her voice carrying through the silent auditorium. "You brought this on yourself," Thornton hissed, pulling harder. "Security. Remove this officer immediately." But the security personnel hesitated. Something about the scene felt wrong, a full colonel physically manhandling a captain in front of 500 witnesses and news cameras. Danica planted her feet and used her leverage to break his grip with a sharp defensive movement she'd learned in basic training. Thornton stumbled backward, his face flushed with rage. "How dare you resist?" he shouted, lunging forward again. This time, Danica was ready. As Thornton reached for her, she sidestepped and used his momentum against him, guiding him into a controlled takedown that put him face first on the auditorium floor. The technique was precise, professional, and completely defensive. The silence shattered. Gasps echoed through the auditorium as the distinguished colonel lay pinned beneath a captain half his size. News cameras captured every second. "I said let go," Danica repeated calmly, releasing her hold and stepping back. Thornton scrambled to his feet, his dress uniform wrinkled and his face crimson. "You assaulted a superior officer. I'll have you court-martialed." I defended myself against unwanted physical contact, Danica replied. She turned to address the stunned audience. And I have evidence that Colonel Thornton has stolen over $2 million from veteran healthcare programs. The auditorium erupted. Officers whispered urgently to each other while enlisted personnel craned their necks to see better. The base commander stood frozen at the podium, unsure how to regain control. Lieutenant Walsh stood up from her seat. She's telling the truth, she called out, her voice shaking but determined. I have financial records proving systematic theft from veteran medical funds. Sergeant Lewis rose next. The motor pool has been without proper parts for 6 months while the officers' club got renovated with our budget money. One by one, Danica's allies stood up throughout the auditorium. Sergeant Martinez from the clinic. Staff Sergeant Williams from supply. 8 voices confirming what everyone had suspected but been afraid to say. Thornton looked around wildly, realizing his support was crumbling. These are lies. Conspiracy theories from disgruntled personnel. Then you won't mind an immediate investigation, Danica said. She pulled out a flash drive, Walsh's evidence, and held it up. Every bank transfer, every fake project approval, every veteran denied care while you lived like royalty. A general from the Pentagon stood up in the front row. Colonel Thornton, I think we need to discuss this privately. There's nothing to discuss. Thornton's voice cracked with desperation. This is a coordinated attack on my character. But his protests fell flat. The audience had seen him lose control, had watched him physically attack a subordinate officer. The man who'd just given a speech about putting veterans first had shown his true nature when challenged. Military police finally moved forward, not to arrest Danica, but to escort Thornton from the stage. His shouted protests echoed as they led him toward the exit. This isn't over, Hayes. You have no idea what you've started. The base commander retook the podium, his voice shaky. Ladies and gentlemen, this ceremony is concluded. All personnel return to your duties while we sort out these allegations. As the auditorium emptied, Danica found herself surrounded by supportive colleagues. Officers who had avoided her for weeks now shook her hand and offered congratulations. The isolation was breaking. That took guts, said Major Patterson from intelligence. A lot of us suspected something was wrong, but nobody wanted to be the first to speak up. 3 hours later, Danica sat in a conference room with investigators from the Pentagon. The evidence was overwhelming: Walsh's financial records, witness statements, documentation of veterans denied care. Thornton's corruption was undeniable. Captain Hayes, the lead investigator, said, "Your actions today have exposed serious criminal activity. This will take time to fully prosecute, but I can tell you that Colonel Thornton is already being held pending charges." 2 weeks later, Danica's phone rang with the call she'd been waiting for. "Sis." Marcus sounded excited. "You won't believe this. They're installing my ramp tomorrow. Full funding approved, rush priority. And get this, they're reviewing every denied veteran claim from the past 2 years. That's wonderful news. I don't know what strings you pulled, but thank you." The investigation results were announced a month later. Thornton faced court-martial for theft, fraud, and conduct unbecoming an officer. The stolen funds were recovered and immediately allocated to veteran healthcare programs. The clinic received new equipment, the motor pool got proper parts, and dozens of veterans received care that had been delayed for months. Danica received a commendation for integrity and moral courage. More importantly, she received a promotion to major and assignment to the Pentagon's Veteran Affairs Oversight Division. Standing in her new office in Washington, looking out at the city she would now help serve, Danica thought about that night when the numbers didn't add up. Sometimes the hardest battles were fought not with weapons, but with courage to speak truth to power. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus: "Ramp works perfectly. Thank you for never giving up." She smiled and got back to work. There were more veterans to help, more wrongs to make right. The fight for justice never truly ended, it just found new battlefields. If this story of courage and integrity inspired you, please hit that like button to help more people see it. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of American heroes who stood up when it mattered most. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between staying quiet and doing what's right? Share your thoughts below. Thanks for watching.